Welcome once again to the High Performance Human podcast. It's Andy here, and we are in a pretty swanky studio for someone who is. Look, I don't want to blow smoke up your trumpet too much, Dan. But for those of you who are really looking to listen to someone that has been there, done that, got the t-shirt, read the book, in a business sense, is one of the most respected individuals in the country, Mr. Dan White. How are you, sir?
Yeah, well, better after that introduction.
Hey, look,
good to be here.
That's what I'm priding myself on, is my intros, man. That's what I'm priding myself on. Dan White is the executive director of Ray White, which is the biggest real estate franchise group in Australia, at least. You got to be up there in terms of worldwide.
We generally talk about Australia and New Zealand as our core market, so we treat them as one market. But market leadership across there. I mean, it's certainly, I'm probably here representing a family business. Obviously, it's fourth generation, over 120 years as a family business, owned and led by the family. So, a lot of people, in the family, but also in the group, contributed to that position, and we're certainly still a long way to go.
A long way to go. Yeah. And we're going to dig into that mentality in a big way, because one thing that I've been always very, very impressed with when it comes to Ray White, obviously having been a real estate agent myself, but never been on the Ray White team. Actually, Ray White's generally been my main competitor in a number of respects. But one thing that I've always respected with regards to how they operate is their mentality around building, developing talent, building culture, building confidence in their employees, in your franchisees, in your salespeople, in your rental departments. Like, there's very few organizations that you just know that the leadership is so sure and assured in what they do and who they do it for. And that's one thing that I'm really looking forward to digging into when it comes to this, because this episode, team, is going to be very much around leadership and how you can lead people into performing better and to help them find their own version of high performance. But before we get stuck into that, Dan, one thing that we always do with all of our podcasts is ask everybody what their definition of a high performance human is. I've got this belief that there are 4 key elements to high performance, being a high performance human, being success, connection, influence, and happiness. Mm-hmm. But you tell me, Dan, what's your definition of a high performance human?
Well, for mine, high performance attitude or high performance human is someone who is an expert but behaves and acts like a beginner, and someone that has achieved a lot and can perform at a level, but yet is restless for what is possible and not setting themselves limits for that, and making sure they'll do everything they can to get there. So just having that. It's having an expert sort of level of experience, but then behaving and doing all the basics and doing it every single day, and not being satisfied with where they're at. And that's that's what I've fortunate been around a lot in our group, and been inspired by people that have had that approach. And it's such a liberating thing once that mindset's created, that whatever you've achieved, there's still more in you, and having that attitude.
Is that something that was instilled in you from the former generations that you've been following from from the OG, Mr. Ray White himself, and coming down? Is that something that you were born into or bred into from an attitude point of view, or is that something that you've learned along the journey yourself?
I think there's no doubt that it's been the family ambition's been strong all the way through, and every generation's built on a generation before. So I've always been around an environment where, as a custodian of a business, to sort of take it further and keep finding ways to make it better, and not being satisfied with where you're at, and backing yourself for more. So I've been fortunate to have obviously role model my father and my brothers and things around me to believe that there is more there. And when you get, for example, a business that's strong like Ray White has been the way through, to say, well, that's great, but my responsibility is to take it to the next phase and see what's possible. And I think then you're applying it to yourself, and it's sort of, so seeing it through the business over 4 generations, and then sort of saying to myself, well, how can I improve myself as well, in the same way that the business has evolved. And so it's been incredibly lucky to be around that environment where that sense of we call it no finish line.
Yeah.
There is no finish line. There is potential for more in us, and then that's been the environment. We've been lucky to have had it, and I think the prior generations have kept it going.
Yeah.
And
okay.
I've been fortunate to sort of come in on that as well and grabbed it as well. Yeah, it's pretty easy to, when you see it, it's pretty exciting. You said before about, you love these podcasts, love what you're doing. I think it's very, once you can grab that attitude, it's very liberating, because you know that whatever you've achieved, there's still so much more to do, which is exciting, I think.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you from a personal point of view is, did you ever feel like the pressure, or did you ever feel that there was any pressure for you to follow in the footsteps of the previous 3 generations? Because point one, it's a lot to live up to. The momentum and the level that those 3 generations have built it to, that's a lot to live up to in the first place, right?
Yeah, sure.
But was there ever a time when you thought, no, I don't know if this is supposed to be my story? Because there's a lot of listeners that will have either had that pressure or have that pressure from their parents to want to fulfill a dream that it might actually be their parents' dream, not necessarily their own. So have you ever felt that before?
I've always felt that my family were always very welcoming if we ever wanted to join the business. So we knew that, my brothers knew that my father would love to work with his sons.
Yeah.
Which I suppose there's a bit of pressure in that sense, just because obviously we all, what a father like, we'd love to support him in that. I took the approach, and sort of my brothers did as well, is how I love being in the business world. I love seeing the cut and thrust of business, and seeing that the entrepreneurialism side of what my father and his father did. And so I saw the family business as a little springboard to say, well, as a family business, I can join that and take it in new directions and take what's there and take it in the way that I'd like to go.
Right.
And so rather than feeling like I was getting a job with my family, it was more like, I'm going to come into a business and try and develop it and take it in new directions that I really like. So, for example, when I was at university and working after university, I worked outside the firm. I love real estate investment in property trusts and institutional property.
Yep.
And then I worked there. Then I saw the family business as a way to bring those skills into Ray White and take it in new directions. So I was able to come into Ray White but say, I want to join the family business, but I think we should start a business called Ray White Capital, which has now become a successful business.
Yeah.
So it was, I didn't feel, I saw the opportunity in the family. I didn't want to go in directly working for my father because I felt that was limiting. I didn't want to be in his shadow. I wanted to could talk about big shoes to fill, impossible boots to fill.
Totally.
So it was better for me and my confidence to step in my own world, use the opportunities that was there. So it certainly gave me a lift and an advantage I wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think by doing it, we've made the family business stronger, because it's now got another really core part of its business, which is outside the agency world, which is exciting. It adds to the family, in terms of our relationships. It's good for family dynamics. It's brought new talent to the group, and it's made us stronger as well. So, if the pressure had been go and work for my father and sort of almost sit outside his office and do and work your way up there, that would have been suffocating. I wouldn't have liked that
For sure.
But I found a way around that, and not only was my suggestion, when it was suggested, the family was like, "Oh, go for it! There you go. Go for it. Have a crack." And there was no second guessing or nervousness around it. It was like, we'll back you, support you, have a go.
Were you nervous about broaching that subject? Was there a time when you were like, oh shit, I don't know if my old man's going to like this?
So a little bit. I wasn't sure whether, especially probably his father at the time, Alan, who's my grandfather, who was a bit more old. I think he was probably less supportive of that in that sense. But fortunately, my father, who was obviously leading the business then anyway, was extremely supportive from the start.
Yeah, okay.
And he's always taken the view that, and I remember, when I first started a few ventures at university with my friends, I'd talk to my father about the business I was doing, like experimental things we all do, stuff. And we asked him for some advice, and he didn't give us any. and
Get stuffed.
yeah. And I said, I remember seeing that, and I said, it was a bit strange you didn't give me and my friends any advice. He said, well, you're better off learning yourself. And if you fail, that's probably better than, in a way, you learn more from failing than being successful anyway. So there's no point, you go for it and see how you go. And that was his attitude, and still is, by the way.
Right.
So when I went to him later on, when I was a bit more established in my career to start Railway Capital, he took the same approach. I mean, obviously at that stage he wanted us to fail, but he very much took the view that as long as you give it your all, you work hard, and you go in with the right intentions, we'll back you.
Yeah.
And there's no second guessing about trying to give his advice on the business plan or whatever. It was very much the fundamentals were, he knew I wanted it to succeed. He knew I was going to do everything I could to succeed. He was there if I needed some support, but he's always backed that approach. And that's been, I think, the magic of our group that we've had is that you can't overmanage people. You got to support them if they want to go. You can't tell them, like, he didn't come to me and say, you should do Railway Capital and here's the business plan.
Yeah.
It was none of that.
Yeah.
It was me going to him with something I wanted to do, and he backed it. So it's quite different. And I think when you do see people in the workplace come to you with something they want to do, that's gold, as opposed to telling them. If you have to go and tell someone to do something, you know that there's a chance of that working is going to be pretty low.
Yeah, because it could be either a limited sort of mindset or or just a bit of a short-sightedness into what could be within their position, right?
Yeah.
You were segueing wonderfully into how leaders can help with high performance. Before that, though, I want to ask the businesses or the ideas that you started with some of your mates at uni. Have you got one that failed spectacularly?
Well, it was we had one that failed. It was we got into the water business, the bottled water business early.
Oh yeah,
and it was now everyone at the time thought it was ridiculous that people would buy bottled water, and we thought that it would work, but we ran out of money because we didn't realise we didn't do the maths very well on the cost of setting up and everything else. So yeah, it was to my father's point, it was a great learning.
Yeah,
it was a great learning. For us going through that exercise, probably a few years too early, and maybe we should have dug our heels and we could have made all the money as everyone else. But I think that early phase of entrepreneurship with your friends, going on the selling things, it was an exciting period of time, and all those guys have gone on to be successful in their own way.
Yeah,
and Brian's probably right. It was a good thing to do, and failing wasn't a bad thing.
On that, you look at how society is rolling these days and how entrepreneurship is like the buzz thing. Everyone's trying to do it for themselves because the ease of access to be able to do it via your phone and whatnot. Very, very easy to try to become an entrepreneur or to label yourself as a CEO of a team of one. If you were to be at university, like right now, with the mentality that you've got right now, I'm sure you would have made a big success of it. But looking at how some people are trying to attack it right now, where do you see there being huge areas for concern? Because obviously, not just from the actual person's point of view, but from a workplace business ownership point of view, where talent is becoming increasingly difficult to find and keep. So when it comes to how society is shaped up now, and based off your own experiences back in the day and knowing that that's just gone bananas now, where do you think the real challenges are with that?
Yeah, it's a great question because teenage kids going through university myself. So looking at it again now, the work that world at my age, looking at the current world versus what it was in my day, I think there's definitely, I agree, more entrepreneurship. There's probably less patience of young people prepared to learn, but also to their defence. A lot of the firms that I was applying to out of university were smaller than they are now. I mean, it seems that industries have become far more concentrated in terms of market size and what have you. So going into the workplace now, looking for a more traditional style job, you're going into massive organisations, which is not very appealing for anyone really, and very impersonal organisations. You're not sure what leadership support you're going to get. Are you just going to be a number in the cog? Yep. And a lot of remoteness, working from home. Who's going to be around? So I can understand I can understand the trend away from that into more, oh, we'll just do my own thing and I'll consult to a few firms, etc.
Yeah.
I think the real risk that young people miss in that is the experience of working for different leaders and people. I think we learn a lot from work. I learned so much from working with a number of people early in my career inside organisations that I took some things from and I rejected some things from for whatever reason, but amazing people I work for. And I really am so grateful that I went through that process.
Yeah, for sure.
And did that. So I do think you have to use that early phase of your career the main thing is to get experience with people and being in environments, having to get on with people around you, having to sort of get to know new styles of business, having to relate to new people, seeing some leaders do amazingly well, seeing some leaders have shortfalls. You can't pay. You should pay for that. In the old days, you should pay for your apprenticeship. There's absolutely no doubt that's the case.
Well, I couldn't not agree more, man. And I think that's the trick that a lot of younger people coming into the workforce tend to not realise. And in all fairness, I'm really glad that you versed it the way that you did, in the sense of it's not necessarily their fault, because there is a lot of like lack of personalisation when it comes to how people are looked after and managed and all that sort of stuff, right?
Well, just a quick story. Family member, she was applying for a job at a well-known place. I won't mention the name. And the first round interview was to do an interview with a computer, a screen.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, and you had to answer questions that popped up, and it wasn't even a human. So, what do you expect What do you expect her to do? So it's disappointing. That's the experience they're getting. Yeah.
No, for sure. And this is where. This is part of the purpose of this podcast, is to actually allow your Gen Zs, your millennials and whatnot, to actually be recognised and seen for the disadvantages and the challenges that they have, as opposed to a lot of your boomers and whatnots who are just shitting on them from such a height and blaming them for everything. Of
course.
And this, like I said, this segues wonderfully into the leadership side of things. I want to look at it from a different way. I want to look at it from the angle of from your position, where you are tremendously responsible for the growth, the development, and the showing of the way towards high performance for so many individuals, right? As a leader, and you've already identified the lack of personalization and that example, which is just ridiculous. What are the really key things that you are hyper focused on when it comes to the ongoing development of the potential within your team? Because like you said, there's no finish line, but you obviously recognize that there's no finish line for every single individual in the context of their own lives as well. So what are the really key things that you really focus on as a leader when it comes to making sure that you're giving people at least the chances, you're opening the doors towards a high level of performance in their lives?
Well, I think there's a number of key things for mine. Is one is really believing in them and making sure they believe in themselves. And said earlier that people generally underestimate what they're capable of achieving. And most people will have setbacks in their careers early on, and most people won't be overnight 6 stars. In fact, 99.5% of people won't have a great start to any area, won't achieve success rapidly. That as fast as they think that they should get. So I think the main thing is making people believe in themselves by you having belief in them, and relating to them on an individual level. So we will talk about the power of the individual, the power of every individual to achieve more than they believe that's possible. And so you have to create an environment as leaders to give people the space to do that, not crowding them or telling them what to do, but trying to encourage them to find that confidence, find that energy themselves to go on and do what they want to do. Yeah, it's very different to managing people or telling them what to do, or we need to do a little bit of that. But the fundamental thing is always trying to back people and remind them that they are capable and they can do more than what they think otherwise. Yeah. We need that a bit ourselves. We need to talk to ourselves a bit on that stuff as well. It doesn't apply to, we face obstacles every day, but we need to do that. So if someone comes into our world, they've got to know that their role is going to make an impact. their role, every single role is valuable. They will contribute to their success. They're the problem and they're the solution, and we're there to support them on that process.
Yeah, nice.
And that's what I think. For us, the old phrase, live and let live. We need to support people on their journeys, whatever that is, and keep encouraging them to keep going. You need to hold them accountable. There's a great phrase one of our business owners uses. One arm around the shoulder, one foot up the backside. There's sort of one arm around. There is a balance.
Like that.
You have to hold people accountable to what's achieved. But fundamentally, most of our top people, say in Ray White, for example, if you speak to them about their things, they've all had moments of truth where they were doubting whether this was going to be for them. And if it wasn't for the leadership around them to keep them going and keep them on track, they wouldn't have made where they got today. And leaders sometimes forget the impact they can have on people.
Big time.
It's underestimated, and people don't appreciate the impact their body language, what they say, the little things has on people getting to where they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as leaders, we don't really understand that or relate to that. We'll let people down. We'll let them down around us.
It's a really good observation, and you could almost extrapolate that out to society, really, couldn't you? Because we were talking about a particular fly in the ointment at the minute with regards to influence, and you look at leadership. It's not just from a business leadership point of view. If you have any sort of voice, then potentially you are a leader to a group of people, to a section of society or business or skill set or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I know that I've perhaps fallen foul of this once or twice, a few years ago in particular, when I was looking at the sort of leadership space in the real estate industry and had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, especially with respect to voices of influence within the game, because it was mainly because it just didn't align with my beliefs and my values around how the industry should be worked and run. But it was my chip on my shoulder. Yeah. And yet for some reason, and it came out sometimes from a social media point of view or in my actions as a little bit sourpuss. Yep. And that, of course, creates a negative energy. It creates a negative ripple that then flows on negatively. And it doesn't matter how little it might be, it could end up becoming a wave for someone down the track. Got a big focus on the mental health side of things. And the words and the language that we use sometimes, the knock-on effect that it can have, it's that whole butterfly effect, right? The butterfly flaps its wings, and then a tsunami happens over in a different part of the world, right? And we've got to be a lot more mindful of that, because the amplification of our voices and our actions, it's so fast now. It's so fast evolving. Have you as a leader? Have you as a leader, have you ever struggled with any of that? Like with regards to how quickly your words and your actions can impact at scale?
Our words, I mean, the body language and words are everything. And my father speaks a lot about praise. Most leaders don't praise enough. They don't give feedback to people. They ask for things to happen, or they set expectations. When people get there, they then sort of forget to praise, or they don't do that properly. Yeah. And that's just a great reminder for all of us, and something he's been more, he's always advocated. I think the thing about leaders is it's so quick. Naturally, in most of our lives, something goes wrong. It's so easy to blame and cause issues. As a leader, obviously, we can't do that. A bit like that discussion about failure. When people inside, it's easy when things happen in your business that don't work. So something goes wrong in your business. Yeah. Someone does something wrong. How do you respond? What do you do about that? How do you relate to that issue? There's a few options. One is to obviously lose your temper and sort of get upset that this is because you all had in your mind this thing was going to work. So a couple of things have probably happened. One, you have to ask yourself the great question: how did I let that happen? How did that decision get made inside my business? What did I do wrong that might have given the impression to that person, my team, to make that decision? Yeah. And so you have to take responsibility for those things. It's so easy to blame people in your team for it or their mistake. You might have communicated it poorly. You might not have explained the importance of a certain thing. You might not have role-played it with them. And then secondly, if you have even if you have done everything perfectly and they've still made a mistake, that's an opportunity for them to learn and develop. And most mistakes they make aren't going to be the end of the world anyway. Let's be honest, it's not the case.
Exactly.
So those moments of truth when mistakes get made inside a business, it's a great opportunity of reflection on your own leadership and how you did it, and also use it as a way to ensure that there's learning from it and we all get better out of it. Because the reality is, you can tell someone a million times what to do about what will happen. It's like kids, tell them don't do this because this will happen. Until they do it and make the mistake themselves, they never really understand it.
Yeah, totally.
So you've got to use it as a way to. Often it's better off to say make the old thing make mistakes quickly. That's often the case, right? So yeah, I think as leaders we often make mistakes. That something goes wrong, and you might something nowadays with texts and emails and stuff, you might say something a bit too quickly. So that's hard. But you got to catch yourselves in those moments.
Big time.
And really reflect again on how did that. Most of the time, if you really ask yourself a few times, how did that happen inside the company that I lead? It'll come back to something you did.
Oh, and you can apply that to pretty much every element of your life. If your kids make a mistake, you'll be like, right, well, shit. Well, what did I miss, or how did I not assist as well as you could say about relationships? Your partner kicks off with you, or your partner does something that really winds you up.
Yep.
The vast majority of the time, if you're in a loving relationship, it's probably because you haven't told them how much it irritates you, or you've not been transparent around a certain thing, right? And that's not their fault. Like, they don't know. I was actually talking to my partner, Heber, about this a couple of months ago when I was having a bit of a moment. I was having a bit of a self-doubt moment and whatnot, as you do from time to time. And she was trying her best to help in the best way she knew how. But because I hadn't communicated with her how best to help me, it was just poking the bear. And it was making me really snappy and whatnot, right? But that's not her fault. Her intention is spot on. And it kind of aligns with what you said before about what your old man said to you, around as long as you give it your all, your intentions are good, then what's the worst that can happen? And then it does boil down to a leadership point of view.
Yeah, I think the hardest bit, then once they go through those things is people in your team that may have talent, but because everyone's got talent, but don't have the ambition or won't work at it. They're the hardest. They're obviously the hardest ones to deal with. People that are rude or maybe that sort of their behaviour's not out of line. That's sort of easier, right? But people that are sort of nice and talented, but don't put the yards in. That is hard. That's a really hard bucket to handle, because a lot of people, other people that do put the effort in, might be outperforming them, and how you get those people to want to achieve more. That's a hard bucket. That's a real, how do you get the most? You talk about high performance. How do you get the most out of people in that scenario?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, and then the other side to that is accepting the other side's level of performance, what they believe is high performance, right? A podcast that I recorded last week with Josh Klein, who owns a social media firm. He knows that he struggles to accept other people's level of what high performance is, because it doesn't align with his. And he's like, well, why don't you want to get more? Why don't you want to go do this? Why don't you want to achieve more? And for some people, it's just that their level of their version of high performance isn't at the level that we're at. And especially when it's our business team, it's very, very difficult to accept that no one is going to want to do well as much as you in your business, right? No one's going to love your kid as much as you do. And it's the same rule applies in business. So now I wanted to talk about taking risks with you, Dan, because I know as an outsider looking in and working with a few Ray White officers as I do with the auctioneering and whatnot, one thing that I know is that, geez, you guys are prepared to back a move, right? You're all in. Whatever you do, you're all in. And whether that is through effort, whether it's financial, not that I know the dollars and cents, but I know that you put a lot of money into moves that you decide to go and make. Yeah. Comes with a lot of risk, right? Give me your thoughts around that, because I know that a lot of people that are listening to this podcast it might not be at the scale that you're operating from a risk point of view, but in their own minds, the risk is still as relevant, because it could just be going from their own job to starting a business, or it could be just a significant change in their lives that inherently carries a risk. How do you as a human process risk?
So, obviously, another great topic. Starting at the macro level, let's talk about the organisation.
Yep.
So, 120 years. And I think a lot about the fact that most organisations are dead before 122. They're finished, right? They've come and gone.
Yeah.
And most companies would be well in decline at that level. So why did that happen? Why do most things go up, go along, and then gradually peak and then fade away? That's because I think they don't stop taking risks.
Right.
I think if you look at most businesses in terms of larger, maybe competitors of ours or national groups that haven't continued to grow, it would be down to that attitude of let's play it safe.
Yep.
We've sort of made it. Let's just defend, and we'll get through it.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's probably the peak of their thing. That's probably just after they peaked, and they've started to decline ever since. And I think that whole appreciation for, if you're not taking risks and trying to grow, you're in decline, and you will gradually fade away to irrelevance. It's at a big level.
Yep.
And I firmly believe that. And the bigger you get, the more risks you're going to take.
Yeah.
So if we're now 10% bigger than last year, we need to be taking 10% more risk than last year.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is hard for some people to, maybe if you're in the finance team, that's a bit like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why would you be investing in that when you can, you can make more money with whatever. We made that spot. Let's just sort of, we're now mature. You can do less risks. Not true. We're now more mature. We're going to take more risks.
Yeah.
How you get that through a company and get everyone to believe in that? Like we often one of my lines is, we're going to take the same risk that Ray had 120 years ago. He took a lot of risk. He opened a business. He rented a shop, never had it. He put on staff, probably have any customers. And then when he got to a certain age, he moved to Brisbane.
Right.
To grow to provide education for his kids and to grow his business. It's probably like me going to New York now.
Yeah.
So that and then my father as well. Like he was in Brisbane, national group started growing into Queensland. His best way to defend was to attack. He then decided to go national himself, and what's happened now. So I've been fortunate to witness time and time again the importance of taking risks and keep taking the company forward. Because if we hadn't done all those things, some of those things I mentioned then, the business wouldn't be here. The business wouldn't exist.
Oh, for sure.
And my determination, I suppose, my brothers, is to ensure that the fourth generation leaves in the better phase than the third generation.
Yeah.
Talk about pressure. The pressure's still on.
Yeah.
I still believe our responsibility is to do that. So you have to do it, otherwise you'll fade away. And it applies to all of us individually. What risks are we taking ourselves to reskill, to improve ourselves? My advice, or the way I justify it, is that, well, I'd rather if I'm going to put some money on something, I'd rather put it on myself.
Fair.
I'd rather do it. I'd rather take responsibility to make that investment work.
Yeah.
And the people I work with. So a lot of great people I work with, I'm happy to back. I know them well. They're great guys. I'd rather back them with investment than go and put it in the stock market.
Yeah, fair.
Which is, I don't know what happens there. So back
Posh
yourself.
man's gambling.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think just finally, is that we can get carried away a little bit risks. Like, I mean, I don't know how many risks we've taken to really bet the whole company. We probably haven't bet the whole company. We've gone pretty hard at some things, but most risks you can do incremental. You can just make make a lot of decisions that are a bit risky that are incremental improvements in the organisation.
Yeah.
The important thing is to be taking them and risking them. Otherwise, once you start taking the approach, like if we get to market leadership, we love the phrase, you've got to be the hunter, not the hunted. You got to, as I was saying at the start about high performance organisation, you need to take as many risks as the guy coming to chase you.
Yeah, for sure.
Because otherwise I'll get you.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's fun too. Like keeps you on your toes. But it's true. Like I was talking about some friends the other day. You think someone had said you've got to a certain phase. Most people that have achieved a lot, if they had told them 20 years ago, you get to that, what will you do? Most of them say, I'd settle up and sit on the beach.
Settle up and sod
But
off.
that's the thing about high performance people, I suppose, that you deal with, is that that's what they love doing, and they'll keep going. Yeah, a lot of the busiest people I know are often the most successful people that don't have to work.
Yeah.
They do it because they love it.
Yeah.
And they keep taking more risks because they back themselves and want to see what they can achieve.
Yeah.
So it's quite remarkable in that sense and even some of our best business owners and agents right across our group, they don't have to do what they do.
Yeah.
They really don't, but they choose to do it because they enjoy the risk taking and enjoy testing themselves about what's possible.
And I think that there's a few things that we can write down in our notes here, team. Is risk is worth doing as long as you're enjoying what you're doing. I think that's a really critical part. Like, we talk about happiness, obviously a critical part of happiness is having fun. And if it's a risk that is going to take you down a path that you don't feel that you're going to enjoy, or you're not sure if you're going to enjoy, then there's always going to be that element of doubt as to whether you are going to go all in on said risk, right?
Yeah.
And you've said it's fun, I enjoy it, it's great, and you've said that on a number of occasions through this podcast and team. That's just that little element alone is something that you really need to pay attention to, because Dan, you look at his face, he clearly loves what he does. It's obvious that he enjoys what he does, and therefore those risks, more like taking a risky pass on a football field that is not going to, it's not going to be the end of the world, but you're going to take it because you enjoy the game and whatnot. Yeah. And it's very, very similar rule applies here. And I think if the risk is based on something that you enjoy, then it's going to be a lesson and not a loss, right?
Exactly, because if you're going to enjoy it, you're going to put everything into it, and you'll get through it. Especially if you go into it with good people. And you're all going to dig in and make it work. Good things will come of it. It may not be exactly it probably won't work out exactly as you hope. It'll take some detours and things along the way, but you'll get there as long as you've got the right people around you and you're enjoying it, and that's what gives you the buzz. Otherwise, you're better off just you put in the stock market and sit and go to the beach, enjoy the dividends. Versus if you love it, then you'll double up and bet on yourselves, bet on your team.
And it ties in with from a success point of view, because, in numerous publications and whatnot, a lot of people talk about success being the journey and not the end destination.
Yeah.
And that ties in wonderfully well with what you've said there, because success is defined as the journey and what you've learned going through that process of taking risk, making changes and whatnot. And what you just said there is brilliant in the sense of it might not get to the actual point that you were thinking it might get to, but it will get somewhere.
So many stuff ups I've had, like there's been heaps, but you look like some of my relationships I've got with the people most important to me in my working life. I've had a relationship with them through trying something that might not have worked, but I sort of met them along the way, and suddenly they were the thing that came out of it, and suddenly that person. So if you look back, I bet you if you look back at the things that have failed, that you've thought technically has failed, there would be things come out of it that you would not have had without that process.
100%.
And there's plenty. I can look back on heaps of them. There's heaps of them. Like some ventures went in, some people that I met through it, and we wouldn't be the same place without it.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you hadn't taken it, you wouldn't have met them. You wouldn't have broadened your experience. You wouldn't have broadened your relationships. You just wouldn't have it without that.
Now, I know that you're a busy guy, and we haven't got a hell of a lot long left. But I want to talk about something that you've mentioned, you've touched on in a number of sections of what we've talked about so far, is the need to have people around you. You've talked about accountability. You've talked glowingly about some of the people that you met, like just now. You just said, the process delivered me a person that has just been a game changer. And then screw the outcome, that was worth going through the exercise for. Or that person was. Yeah. Your opinion, because and this is another thing that I have so much respect for when it comes to how you guys operate, is you are prepared to back the people around you. You find the right people, and you're prepared to pay for the right people, you're prepared to support the right people, all of that sort of good stuff. When it comes to your own accountabilities and whatnot, and you mentioned you got your brothers and your old man and whatnot, so there's a family accountability there and a desire to make sure that you beat your old man, basically.
Yeah.
Which is essentially what it is. Talk to me about that, like in the sense of, and I want to ask you more so in a sense of when you've recognised that someone in your circle or someone that's in your sphere of influence they're not quite bringing a positive sort of reaction out of you. Like, how have you recognized that? Because a lot of people will be at the very, very start of their journey when it comes to trying to find what high performance is for them. And one of the first things that they're going to need to do is find out who's right and who's wrong for the world that they want to create for themselves. So how have you managed to identify that with the people around you?
So probably my experience early on, maybe relationship when I joined the business, was I very much look for people to have ambition and chase and go after what they want, and not to have to drag them along the way in that process.
Yeah.
And so my belief is creating their confidence in them and backing them to go for it. I think the people in my world, I get a sense I can tell whether they're growing and getting better and improving.
Yeah.
And are they taking a few more risks themselves?
Yeah.
Are they developing as people? And you can sort of sense whether them being in my world is actually benefiting them or not.
Yeah.
Not my world or my family sort of world.
Yeah.
And if you can see that taking place, that's the exciting thing. If there's people in roles where they've got the opportunity to grow and they're not developing because they're not choosing to make, they're getting caught up in the noise, they're getting caught up in detail they don't need to get caught up in.
Yeah.
They're over managing people. They're telling everyone what to do rather than leading their own teams.
Yeah.
And they're just holding themselves back and not taking their risks, stepping forward. That's where obviously the challenge becomes.
Yeah.
The catch, this is quite a big catch though. If you believe in the whole providing an environment for people to thrive and letting them go without over managing them, which is sort of most people's philosophy, the catch is that by doing that, you're not telling them too much what to do. So when they are floundering, when you tell them they're floundering, they're a bit surprised that you're telling them that. Yeah. Because by definition, you've had to give them the freedom to do it. So it can be an awkward process because you have to give people the rope and let them run. And then if it's not working, people can get a bit disappointed that we haven't helped them enough along the way.
Yeah, okay.
But the point being is that people, if you can give the people the right environment to go for it, they're better off if you give them the freedom to have a crack than telling them what to do along the way too much.
Yeah.
So that is the hard part of all those things. I haven't got the perfect answer for that one.
Right.
But I think it's way better. It's a way better model, I think, to good people don't want to be managed. Good people don't want someone telling them what to do too much. Yeah. Because they won't hang around.
No.
And so they want to be led. They want to be in partnership with people that are good. But good people don't want to be told what to do all the time. And if they do want to be told what to do all the time, there's a problem there.
Yeah. Do you find that, I think a key barometer, should we call it, a key indicator for the right people that are around you, whether it's personal, professional, a key barometer would be the ones that ask more questions instead of giving more answers. Mm-hmm. Do you think that could be a real key indicator for anybody that's listening, that's wanting to find out whether these people are the right people to be around them?
Yep.
The ones that are asking more questions as opposed to just barking answers.
Yes, that, and also you as leader, you asking them questions, their reaction to those questions is everything.
Yes.
So again, my style, family style, would be ask questions of people, how they're going, what's happening, and why, without trying to look like leading questions, just genuine open questions.
Yeah.
And if those questions don't create more curiosity in that person or create enthusiasm around addressing those questions, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
If those questions are met with denial or lack of interest, then there's no curiosity, there's no taking it forward. So you're right, absolutely. Questions are the most powerful things in leading people and understanding their ambition and where they're going and how curious they are. Are they really thinking more deeply about stuff, or are they just stuck in a process?
Absolutely. Now, this has been a conversation that I wish I could carry on, because you are what you say you are on the tin, right? You are definitely a guy that lives what he talks and walks what he talks. And team, if you could be in this room, in this little studio that we've got here, this very posh little studio,
Yes.
by the way, FYI, just take a look,
Yeah.
it's dead posh. Then you would feel that Dan is a man of his word, and he's a man of his energy, which is tremendous. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your schedule to be in with us today. It's going to bring so much value to so many people. Of that, I'm absolutely certain. One last one. We always end on this one, which is something that is a bit of a self-reflection piece, which we talked about earlier, is really, really important. Right now, in terms of your own personal performance, not the business, your own personal performance, right? And the way that you roll. What do you think is the one thing that's missing from your own game right now when it comes to what your own personal version of high performance is?
I would say to that, I probably don't have enough feedback on my performance. I'm not very good at asking for feedback from those people around me about the impact I'm having on them. It's whether there's no framework for it. I don't ask for it. People don't offer it as much as they possibly could too. So I'd probably say, hearing myself talk earlier about feedback and asking questions, I do get it from my father and my brothers,
Of course.
but increasing those around me. So probably the thing that I could be much stronger at is listening more and asking more questions back on what I'm doing, as opposed to the other way around.
Do you think that's just because you are who you are, right?
Well, yeah, maybe I'm not creating the environment for people to feel comfortable asking the questions. Don't know, but I like when I'm speaking to guys I work, asking questions and giving praise. It doesn't, the other way around doesn't happen so much. Maybe it's something I can work on. But there's no doubt that understanding more about people around you and how they relate to you and how comfortable they are working with you is probably an important factor, and I could know a bit more about that. Hopefully I'll listen. Yeah.
Dan White,
Hopefully it's good.
thank you so much for being
pleasure.
with us today. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time and your insights and your candor and whatnot. Please, it would be incredible to have you back on at some stage. It would be tremendous. But team, you should have a book full of notes from there, whether it's around business conversations or questions or your own personal questions and conversations. The stuff that we've talked about today has an influence and it has meaning in every single element of your life. Make sure that you follow Dan. I know that plenty of you might already do that, but make sure you follow him, because he is who he says he is. And that is a very unique thing for someone at the level that he tends to operate at. On behalf of Dan and myself, thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe, healthy, happy, and we'll catch you on the next episode of the High Performance Human Podcast. Take care.